We have half hour, so I want to talk about a different Genesis. It's a book that those of you who've been in my classes know well, perhaps better than I. Yeah.
And I'm just wondering if there is the more painful knowledge or experience that said temptation and suffer consequences, or is it more painful to know that it's there and to refrain?
My father had a friend, I forget his name. He had two sons. One son was very business-minded. Trying to remember his name. He had cancer, he passed away. His wife is probably dead now too. So the father used to be a violinist, but he also had a job where he had, a stable income. His son was an artist. He was a painter, photographer. And one day the son goes to the father and says, I want to be an artist. And the father sits him down and tells him exactly what lives inside a stable world and what lives inside a world that is filled with chaos. Now, most parents are not equipped for that because they don't really have access to these worlds very reflectively. And they don't do that because they're not really serious. Parents are not serious, and they can't be serious because it's difficult to pay for life. Rent and food and just what we call the human condition and all that. He says to his son that you can be an artist. I will support you the best I can, but I will tell you the following. It can be a very creative life. It comes with a great amount of devastations. It'll make your marriage unhappy. It'll make you unavailable to your kids. You will never have a steady income. So whatever relationship you go into, the woman will leave you because you're not stable, you're not secure. You will be an awful companion to anyone and anything. And there's a good chance you will become an alcoholic. You will beg for money. You will beg for security. And, it's like I have athletes in my classes. I used to. Football players. And every single one of them at Laney say, oh yeah, I don't take school seriously because I'm going to play for 49ers. And I would tell them, just colleges alone, there are about 300 colleges in California. And all the football players, they all have the same dream. Do you really think you stand a chance? I'm not saying it's impossible, but have a backup plan, man. Don't be an idiot. And the son, after hearing, what the father had said, he continued his passion for art. He said, I will choose the world of art over security. But here's what the son didn't understand. The son understood all these negative concepts intellectually. I have no doubt that if I was to ask you, Lena, why don't you write an essay for me about how it feels to be old? You can probably write 10 pages. You'll probably be able to string some words together, poetically, creatively, articulately, and I'll probably give you an A for it. But in that essay, you understand zero. You understand nothing. You're only 20. You have no idea what happens when you lose abilities. You have no idea what happens, especially as a woman in this youthful culture, that exterior beauty is everything. You have no idea what happens when you start getting wrinkles, and how men will look at you and pity you and make you feel invisible. But you can write about them and get an A. You know, it's one thing to make people understand. It's different to make people feel and then understand. So, we have a few minutes. I want to very quickly cover the book of Job. It's usually considered a book that guides people how they should suffer and why people suffer in general. But I don't really think the book of Job is about that. I think some author, and the book of Job, by the way, is not very original. If you go back to the Sumerian tradition, you can find a couple of people who lived very much like Job. The book of Job is another version of the Genesis story, just worded differently. And the person who wrote it probably just wanted to spice up, the creation story in a different way. So what you have in the book of Job is the following. You have someone like me, profoundly arrogant, and someone like me who has attained some degrees and enjoys, prospers in the sort of work and effort I've made in the past few years in my life. As I come to class, I ran for 2-3 hours, and I've done it for about 30 years. Sometimes I stand in awe of myself. How could I notice? How could I feel so much depth in the stuff that I talk about? I enjoy when people call me professor. I enjoy when I go home and look at my diplomas cemented on the walls. Even my wife calls me professor. I feel great when I publish books. Makes me feel immortal. I am far removed from the human condition. The moment dissatisfaction, empty, comes my way, I sit in a room and I meditate. And I give meaning to my suffering and my emptiness. And whenever life becomes cheap and useless for me, I'll call my brother and we'll have a philosophical dialogue for an hour. And just in case my class of Laney bore me, because I've seen the same old faces day after day, I call my brother and I say, Iraj, I want to come to your class and give a talk. And I go there and I ruffle some feathers. And then Iraj will call me, we'll talk about, the class I taught for him for a day or so. He makes me feel relevant and important. And that's Job. That's all of us. All of us are filled with assumptions about ourselves. And none of us really dare to capture the ugliness that lives within, the incompetence, how insufficient we are in so many different things. how young and foolish we are. No, we are far too hubris, too foolish. But we don't really know those things about ourselves. We just like to embrace the good things. And that's what Job does. But you see, there is a serpent, goes to God, and says, very much like the story of Gilgamesh, and says to God, you know, there is a man down there. And remember, the story of Job is these are steps that people need to go through. And not people, I'm talking about specific individuals. Should they be ready? These are the steps they need to go through in order to graduate and reach the station of humility and acceptance. And you have to have the right component inside you. Okay? Satan goes to God, and remember now, I'm going to spice up the story, so when you go home and read the story of Job, it's not going to sound the way I'm telling it to you. But I am much more creative than the author of the book. So the Satan goes to God and says, God, I think I have found you the right candidate. What do you mean? He is ready. Ready for what? If you want to be understood, God, if you want someone down over there on earth to feel you the right way, to understand how grand you are, I have found the right man for you. Who is it? Job. What does Job have? And these are the things that you need to have. Job has money. Job has a marriage. Job has children. Job is like the Buddha. He's a king. And he's a king because God likes him. He gives him everything. But Satan goes to God and says, he is ready. Okay, I'll go to Job in a dream. Oh, no, Satan says to God. That's not the way to educate Job. That's not the way to transform him. You transform people through pain. Not by sitting and having a conversation. Pain. And God asks Satan, well, what are you talking about? Let me go down there. Let me rid him of the things to which he's attached. What is he attached to? He's attached to prosperity, i.e. animals. Fruit trees. He sells them in the market every Saturday. He is attached to his kids. He also loves God. Now, the thing about Job that you need to understand is he is a religious man, which means he has the fear of God inside him. It doesn't need to be produced. He's not an atheist. He has religious emotions inside him. So he knows how to cry for religious reasons. He knows how to repent for religious reasons. He has religious emotions inside him. He doesn't need to be trained for those things. Remember, if you are an atheist, your teacher has to train you First, to make you religious, to give you a belief system, to have you become faithful, to fear an entity you can't see or touch or smell. He needs to train you as to how you should pray, how you need to have religious emotions as to secular emotions. Satan has it easy. All the necessary components are inside Job. They just need to be refined. Okay? So Satan goes down there and injects in Job pain. His kids are butchered in front of him. His animals are butchered in front of him. His trees are cut down. He's got nothing. But what is Job's philosophy of life? I am sad. Like Diana, I am grieving the loss. But I will not blaspheme. I'm not going to drink. I'm not going to smoke. No medication for me. God gives and God takes away. Nothing down here happens accidentally, haphazardly. The invisible hands of God is everywhere. Go back to what we talked about in regards to monotheistic traditions. God is everywhere. God is all-knowing. You may not understand why you have lost someone. Grieve. But you should know that it has been planned by God. And that should give you a good amount of cushion, comfort. Okay? God creates things out of his own belly. He puts them in a strange environment. And when he comes to miss them, he'll take them back. That's really the secret of Buddhist and Hindu mandala. Okay? Now, Job's wife goes to him, and remember, women are practical. They're grounded. Goes to Job and says, why would you want to believe, have faith in such a God? But Job is not tempted by his wife. He says, we are not in the mind of God. We don't know why the world is the way it is. We don't know why things happen. We don't know why God gives, but doesn't ask us for permission and just suddenly takes. We must accept. Satan goes up and God says, did you see the faithfulness of my servant? And Satan says, yes. But here is what you need to understand, God. People always will suffer loss. But if you really want Job to understand, take things that live inside him. Touch him. Let the emotions be connected to his physical body. Your father is depressed, you take care of him, yes. But when you yourself get depressed, you can't get your body out of the bed. Now you know what depression is. First-hand experience. Now you're connected to depression, body, mind, and soul. That's how you educate people. You can feel bad for your mom, you can feel bad for your dad, for your friend, for your brother, for your sister. You can feel bad. And you should feel bad. But real understanding is when you are engaged in body, mind, and soul. And that's the real test. And when this happens, you know what Job does? He demands justice. He doesn't demand justice when his sons die. He suffers, he's in pain, but he doesn't demand justice. He eventually accepts. But now that he himself is suffering, when Satan comes here and makes his body sick, and when you're physically sick, emotionally you get sick, mentally you get sick, you will lose your faith. He says, I want to die. I no longer want to suffer. His education has begun. He has friends who are arrogant enough to go to him and say to him, this is happening to you because God wills it. He says, I don't care. I want to know why. I don't deserve this. My father died last week. My mom died the week before that. All of my siblings got in a crash and they all died. And now I am diagnosed with cancer. What the fuck? And anyone who goes to him to try to give him comfort, to rationalize this for him, to reason this thing out with for him, he says, you guys don't understand. Pain makes you immensely lonely and angry. You will feel orphaned, abandoned by the entire universe. You will lose your faith. You will want to understand, but you can't. Life is far too big. Events are far too complex. Human intelligence far too limited. Satan is no longer needed. God simply needs to wait. Wait, wait, wait. You know, it's like when you cook a chicken or when you are baking like a cake, once in a while you open the oven door, you put a stick in there to see if anything is coming out. If the stick comes out clear, you turn it off, take it out, you let it cool. God waits for Job to cool down. At the right time, he goes to Job. He doesn't show his face because God needs to remain mysterious, invisible. He says, listen, you thought you were intelligent. You learned you're not. You thought you were humble. Now you know you're not. You thought you knew what God is. Now you know you don't. You thought you had faith. All the things you assumed yourself to know, for the first time, from the very core of your being, you have come to accept that you don't know anything. Stop being human. Stop complaining. You are a fly in the middle of nowhere. If you want to live life, there is only one way. Accept. Don't demand to understand. Accept. You will be given things. Those things will be taken from you. All games are played upon you by God. Now you have humility. Now you have wisdom. Now you are meek. Now you are poor. Now you are beautiful. And Job takes some dust, pours it on his head. God giveth and God taketh away. That is the Garden of Eden, being expelled from the Garden of Eden, feeling the blood and the sweat, and eventually coming to accept that you and I have no power over life, and most of the events it brings to us. We have no power over sickness. We have no power over life or death. We have no power over when God takes our parents or our children, when our boyfriends will leave us, when we'll get bored. We have no power over any of this stuff. You don't need drugs. You don't need alcohol. You don't need distraction through sex. We are nothing in the presence of life. And in that nothingness, you will attain humility. And in that humility, you will be able to accept all that life offers. And for the first time, you become a sage. You become like the earth, as the Hindus would say, or you'll become like the sun, as the Buddhists will say. The sun does not discriminate. The sun will shine, will warm the good and the bad and the ugly equally. The earth will receive flour as well as urine. It's only then where Job becomes truly like the sun or the earth, accepts all things. And from that point on, he does not cast any stones, because he knows that he is a sinner, that everybody else also has sinned. There is no one to blame. We are all tested, and we will fail tests. My mother, and we'll go after this, she says one day her mom goes to her and says to her, "Can you thread this needle?" And my mom whispered to herself, "How can it be that my mom can't do this on her own? It's such an easy thing. It's a nice string, you just put it inside the eye of the needle, that's it. How can my mom not see this?" For 20 years now, she asks people to thread needles if she can't find her glasses. What she laughed at in her 20s now afflicts her. And that's the beautiful thing you need to know about making judgments. Whatever you judge, you need to understand it really, really well. And the only way you can understand it is by becoming the thing you judged. That's what Job experienced. It's good to see all of you. Have a good night. Stay well, healthy. They say COVID is on the rise, so don't get close to anyone, not even your husbands or wives. Okay. Have a nice evening. Thank you.